Hi there, it's Holly Klein again from Willamette ESD. Today we're going to talk about visual strategies and supports to help your learner. So there's a reason that we present things visually to students. Students with autism in particular tend to be visual learners and have a weaker auditory system. So they don't always process the information that is told to them, but for some reason pictures make sense to them or visual information makes sense to them and they can process that information a lot better. It's predictable for students. So we can tell them what's expected, what's coming next, how much work to do. There's so many things that we can communicate with visual systems. There's a huge increase in independence where our students are no longer needing us to stand right there with them to make sure that they understand what to do. The visuals now give them that information and the adults can start backing off so that the child becomes more independent. And the systems that we create for students, the visual systems, they grow and change with the child. So we start a lot more concrete and then we get to more abstract types of visual supports. So one of the things that the visual supports do is it allows information to be held still in time. So when you say something, your words go out and then they're gone. When you have a visual, it might say the same thing that your words said, but it holds there in time so that the child has time to process that information and remember it and hold it into their brain for later use. It directs the student's attention to relevant information. So sometimes kids with autism can have a hard time filtering out what is the important information to pay attention to. So the visuals help point out the important information for your child. And it provides consistency and routine, which we know helps minimize behaviors and calms your child so that they are able to participate in routines and schoolwork and everyday functioning. So when we are looking at visual supports, when we start with new learners, we're going to start with real concrete visual information. So when we are talking concrete, we're looking at objects, real objects, a part of an object, matching objects, those kinds of things so that it's really clear to students what we're talking about. Then we'll move on to pictures. So either real photographs or line drawings of pictures. And then we have students who move on to more abstract symbols like reading written words. Okay, when we're talking about the concrete learning, we are looking at the physical structure. And we've talked a lot about this before, so I'll just touch on this right now. But that physical structure defines an area for students so they know where they're supposed to be. We can use furniture to do that. That gives a real concrete visual definition of where a student is supposed to be. You can see over here, this desk, it's super clear where they are going to work. You can use carpet squares or, whoops. See if I can go back here. Sorry about that. You can use carpet squares or blankets to define a space. Rug area, teachers will do that oftentimes, have a rug where students are supposed to sit around the rug. It just defines that space. Here they have defined spaces with placemats, so it's really clear. And if you could see this sign, it says 4 people are allowed at that station. And you can tell that because there's 4 mats there. It just makes it really visually clear to students where they're supposed to be. Here they've used tape to enclose a play area. And you can see that the kids have all of their toys within that defined space. Physical structure also lets us, and visual supports allow us to teach some concepts which might be difficult for students with autism, such as waiting. Waiting can be hard because it's an abstract concept of time, which is hard for our students. So we can define these areas with visual supports. Here they've used feet to define where students are supposed to line up. Here again, tape or chalk to define where they're supposed to be. I've had people use chairs as with students who are waiting their turn, maybe to wash their hands or something. But it gives them, again, that real clear definition of this is where I'm supposed to be. And when somebody gets up, then I move to the next chair. It makes it super clear for students. And we saw some examples of whose turn is it next? So there's a lot of different visual supports that you could do for that. You could do, if your student is not reading yet, you could do pictures of whose turn is it. If they're reading, then you can easily do their name. Same concept. Each turn might be a set number of turns, and then it's the next person's turn, or you might use a timer to define how much time that person has. Here's another idea to keep tabs on whose turn it is, just easy clothespin with a name on it. So Evan has his turn, the timer goes off, and that pin is removed. If it's a recurring turn, you're going to put it at the bottom, and then the next person goes. We use visual supports to help define the availability of materials. Stop signs are great for things that aren't available at that time. You'll see a stop sign right here. There's some closed signs on these computers when they are not in use and not available to students. And we've seen this one before here with the curtains over materials that are not available at that time. This one over here is an open sign for if someone is, if the restroom is available, or if it's not, you can flip it over. All right, and then we talked about this, that time is a hard concept for students with autism because sometimes it feels like forever when you're doing an activity or when you're waiting for a preferred activity. So there's various ways that we can make time more concrete and visual for our students. One of these is a dot timer, and you can use these with a can, with buttons or poker chips, anything like that. And each button represents about a minute or a turn. So if you say to your child, let's see, 5 more times down the slide and then we're going, they go down the slide, that's 1. They go up and down the slide again, that's 2. So it's really clear how many more turns they have before it's time to leave the park. It can also go the other way where you can define how many buttons are on there at the same time, how many poker chips or whatever you are using. But you can say, 3 more minutes and then we're done. And it doesn't have to be an exact minute. It can just be, all right, 2 more minutes. That's all. And then we get to go to the park. 1 more minute. All right, you are all done. Okay. So those are a real handy way to define the time for students. A basic egg timer or digital timer works. There are a lot of different timer apps on your phone, and most of us have our phones with us. Here's a visual countdown. So it just gives those students that information of like 5 more minutes, whew, the 5 is removed, 4 more minutes, 4 is removed, 3 more minutes. And it just makes it super clear for our students so that they, again, there's that predictability, like they know when a preferred activity is ending or how much more of a non-preferred activity they have to do before they get their preferred activity. This over here is called a time timer, and it's it's a clock designed for students with autism. And again, it gives that visual representation of time. So this red section gets smaller and smaller as the time draws near. And so a student can look up and see visually how much time is left. All right, we also covered a lot of this in our routines and schedules section. So these are visuals for teaching routines or steps of a task. And again, a lot of our routines will have multiple steps, and we want to make sure the student is doing all the steps and isn't having us to have to tell them every step of the way what to do. So this is, again, increasing independence. So it could be steps of an activity up here. Make sure to put your name on the paper, cut it out, glue, color, and put it on the drying rack. All right, here's a routine here for shredding paper. And on this routine strip, once they are done, the first one is get chair. They'll put that cue over here to the finished pocket. And then they'll do the next step, get paper, put the cue over to the finished pocket. All right, and they do that each step of the way. And again, that helps students keep that information in their head without having to rely on an adult constantly telling them what the next step is. Here's for students who are readers. You can do a checklist. This is getting ready for school day, in your bedroom, get dressed, put your dirty clothes in the laundry, in the bathroom, brush your teeth, comb your hair, and student is checking it off as they complete those tasks. All right, we can also use visual supports to help students understand rules or expectations. And they are really, it's so helpful to have this kind of information that you are presenting to your child before the activity starts, before the expectation, because it's giving them that information ahead of time rather than us having to go afterwards and say, oh, you were supposed to do this. We're telling them ahead of time what it looks like. And then we can, during the activity or the routine, we can be encouraging them and praising them for following the expected guidelines. So here you'll see outdoor rules. So these are the expectations when your child is outside. Here's one for older students, 10 technology rules for every classroom. And, you know, you can always, for older students who still need this information presented, you can do it in a fun way like this. We do oftentimes, we'll do these voice scales so that it's clear to students what voice level they can have in the classroom or when you're working with them. I have a few more rules and expectations. Here's one for chewing gum. You know, keep your gum in your mouth. Don't make noise with it. And, you know, don't get your hands all sticky. And when you're done, put it in the trash, please. So having those expectations stated ahead of time, then it's super clear to students and they are going to tend to be more successful. All right, here are some T-chart expectations. And this one over here is a yes/no chart. I used this in my classroom when I had a therapy dog come in, and after the first visit, I thought, oh, we have a few things to teach. And so we went over the rules and expectations of how you engage with the dog prior to him coming to class. So the dog's name was Sinbad, and yes, you can brush the dog's hair, you can shake the dog's paw, you can rub his belly, you can brush his teeth, you can pat his head, but please don't kick the dog. No hitting, and you can't ride the dog, can't pull his ears, and you can't pull his tail. So we learned that one the hard way, but we were prepared for all the other visits after that. This one is a can do, can't do chart. This is for respectful behavior, respectful talk. And so sometimes defining those more abstract concepts and what that looks like. And so going through this again before you're going to see some of those expected, those behaviors, you want to do it ahead of time and just review those concepts. Here is, you'll hear this language with our students a lot. We talk about expected and unexpected behavior. And so here we are in class, and it's expected to raise my hand, to have a quiet mouth, hands to myself, and do my work. It's unexpected not to listen to my teacher, yell or argue, touch, hit, or kick. And so we tend to go over these types of rules or expectations at the beginning of the school year, maybe at the beginning of class every day. It's just very helpful to review those expectations ahead of time. These are directional cues, and they're just a quick reminder of behavioral expectations. So oftentimes we'll have them that say quiet or sit, hands to self, walk, stand up, that kind of thing. Some of the ones we are using a lot these days are make sure you have your mute on or turn your mute off. We can't hear you. Don't forget, you still need to raise your hand. So these help us even in these days of the virtual learning to remind students, and just by showing it to them. So if you have a student who's blurting out in class, we can just point to this as a visual reminder, and the teacher doesn't even have to say anything. And the student goes, oh, and raises their hand. So these are very helpful. And again, we can help you create any of these that you need and help support your student with this. Okay, one of the things that visuals do is helps our student know what finished looks like. So it's kind of like that time concept where everything feels open-ended and they're never quite sure when they're done. So we make it really clear. The early learners, the new learners, we do it very concretely. We give them tasks that are close-ended. They have a clear ending. You can visualize this with maybe one of those inset puzzles. So student has all the puzzle pieces, they put the puzzle pieces in, and the activity is done. That has a clear, close-ended concept. So we use those types of activities to teach. And so you'll see this student here takes the activity from the left, does the activity, and it's clear when it's done, and then he puts it in finished. So we help them to get that clear understanding of this is what it's like when you're done. All right, so this can happen when students get older as well. So we're going to look at a visual of a finished product of a multi-step task. So this might be, very well might be my desk at work, as my coworkers can attest. But here's a messy desk and a clean desk, okay? So the visual support that we might provide for that student is little cues here. What does a clean desk look like? It looks like your school tools are put away. So all the school tools are put away here. It looks like papers are filed in your binder and not all over the desk, right? And it looks like your computer is shut down and closed. All right. So now when your student, this looks very overwhelming for them to try and complete that task. But if they have this visual of their desk looking clean and these little reminders here, they can go, okay, I need to make sure all my papers are filed in a binder. And it helps them break down the steps of this task and be able to say, okay, now it's not quite so overwhelming. I'm going to take care of all the papers and file them in my binder. I'm going to make sure all my school tools are put away. And I'm going to make sure that my computer is shut down and closed. That's my worst habit right there. So now they have an idea of how to break that larger task down into smaller pieces. Okay, so when they're doing bigger projects at school and trying to break it down into smaller steps, oftentimes being able to visualize that finished project is what our students need help with. So teachers will often keep previous students' past work so that they can display for our, their current students, this is what a finished product would look like. So you'll see that a lot in classrooms. And it might be a little harder now that our students are, virtual and in their homes. But you can help go through big projects with your child and help sketch it out for them. So if they have a drawing, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a sketch of, okay, we need the title up here. We're going to have a picture of this banner over here, and then these people drawings right here, and the housing drawings right here, and then the written report right here. It gives them an idea of what that finished product is going to look like. We also use visuals to help with problem solving. So over here are some problem solving strategies. Our students tend to, if they encounter a challenge, then they kind of freeze up and have a really hard time, like, what do I do? So here are some options. If you're being yelled at, you can ignore it, you can walk away, or you can ask them to stop. Okay, so there's various problem solving options in here for challenges that student might encounter. Here's what do I do if? So the phone rings, and what do I do if I know the number or I don't know the number? So those are options. And again, those are things that our students have a hard time sorting through if there are decisions to be made, or if you respond differently, if it's this way, or respond differently if it's that way. So you can kind of define that for them and help them decide how they're supposed to react and respond. Here's what do I do if I get stuck? Here's some options here. So you can make these kinds of supports for your student to help them through these situations, because adults aren't always going to be there. And we want our students to be able to process these solve these problems and on their own, and be able to make these decisions even when we're not there. We can use visual supports to help define how much work to do. So we can use a highlighter to identify what problems your student is supposed to do. Sometimes when our kids see a huge piece of paper with so much work, it can be really, really overwhelming. And so picking just a few problems to do that shows that they can do the work without having to be quite so overwhelmed with the quantity, that will help narrow it down. That you can take a worksheet and just fold it in half, and then your student only needs to do that half. So they're not seeing the whole overwhelming page. You might have them circle just the odd or just the even numbers and just do those. So those are some ways to kind of break down and make work not be so overwhelming. We also use visual supports for social instruction. So here you can see some social skills broken down into steps. This is how you say hi. And so they have all the steps and they're in pictures so that students can review that ahead of time. Like, we're going to be going outside or we're going to the park, and we're going to review this before we go so that we know when we encounter another child there that we know how to go and say hi. So all of these, all of the visual supports, they take teaching of the support, and it's a teaching process. And so we are helping them, and then we're fading out our support, which is what we'll get to next week as well. So you can also use visual supports as reminders of what to say in social situations. So sometimes we'll give students a script of what to say, how to join in to play, or what do you say when you need to, interrupt somebody, or something like that. So we'll give them social scripts so that they don't freeze up and not know what to say in a given situation. Lots of practice of this. We also use visual supports for some of the turn taking. So this one, the arrow turns towards whose turn it is. And then once they've had a turn, they've put a little sticky flag there so they can keep track of whose turn is next, and it goes around. This one is simple for 2 players or 2 children interacting with the same thing. There's a bead here on a pipe cleaner, and the bead shifts from here when it's my turn and over here when it's your turn. So these are very simple things that we can help you make, or you can make yourself at home. They're very, again, nothing fancy. We also use visual supports with what's called video modeling. So you may have noticed that your child gravitates towards some of the videos or some of the, watching TV or YouTube or anything like that. So we have used this method also to capitalize on that interest. And it's another way of holding that information still, because students can re-watch these over and over again to really process the information. So we use video modeling to teach routines, to teach new skills, and to model social behaviors. So you can use pre-made videos. There's the Model Me Kids series, or Fitting in and Having Fun. There's online subscriptions such as Everyday Speech, and you'll see this used a lot with students in our social skills groups. We use these, and both of those cost money, but you can make your own video modeling. Everybody, most people have a phone and can easily take a video, and you can use siblings in it. You can have your student who you're making the video for be the star of the show, and going through the routine, you can have another adult, you know, a parent, anybody that just walks through how a routine looks. What do you do? Or what is this social skill, and what are the expectations, you know, when you interact with others? So you're going to take small pieces of information. So like one routine, one social skill, one, you know, new skill on that video. And that's what your student will watch before they engage in that routine or that behavior. All right. And then we have visual supports for making choices, because choices sometimes can be difficult for our kids, or engaging in those downtime opportunities, you know, leisure or choice time can be hard to structure because that's an unstructured time. So we can have choice boards that help define what the options are. So here's one with photos, just a basic I want, and these are the play items that are available. Here's let's play a game, and all the game options are right here. Here's one for older students for packing their lunch. And so pick one main dish, and they have listed all the main dishes that are available. Pick 2 fruits and veggies. Here's all the fruits and veggies that are available that are in the fridge right now. Pick one side. And it helps give students that framework, but there's choices within it. You can also use visual supports to help self-regulation and calming. So what are some things I can do to calm myself? Here are my choices. The other thing that you can do, and it's just so easy, is the good old sticky pad for choices. So you can have a choice. You can read a book or play a game, and they choose. And the nice thing about these is if you've got a reader, you can just hold these out. Here's your choices. And then I wouldn't say anything. I would wait. So that's another powerful thing that people can do with kids, is wait and give them that process time, because sometimes it takes a while for that information to sink in. And every time we talk, it interrupts that. So we want to give them that time to process. So you might just hold these out until they pick their choice. And if your student isn't reading, you can just draw a picture, and that's totally fine. And I am not an artist, but I'm telling you, kids know what you're drawing, so it's okay. Here's our choices: book or game. Okay. They also have this one down here, happens to be a digital one, a digital sticky choice board. So you can find those options as well. All right. So a lot of information. I'm hoping that you can find something that works for your student. And I hope a lot of light bulbs went off as far as things that your child might need and could use. So I'd like you to pick 1 or 2 visual supports that you think is going to help your student right away. I want you to ask for help if you need it, because we can help you create any of these, or help figure out what's going to be the best format for your child. We are here to help. There's a lot of supports on that Star Autism Supports website, as well. So there's a lot of things that you can print off there already. So we are here to help. And then once you've done that, you're going to teach your child how to use that visual. And remember to keep things simple. It does not have to be fancy. And again, here we are at our help sessions. So the following week, we are there Tuesday, October 13th between 5 and 6 p.m. and Thursday, October 15th between 11 and 12. And you can join in that question and answer session at any time within that hour. We are there to help you. And if you can't make those help sessions, just reach out to us and your students team, and we'll help you figure this out. So good luck and happy learning.